What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Lunch Table Sports Podcast. This is the first part of a two-part series of our top 10 positions in the NFL. Today, we start with the offensive side of the ball, viewing our top 10 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Without further ado, let's get started. Adyn, who are your top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL?
All right, to start with me, top 10 quarterbacks. I'm a big fan. I think this is an easy one, no brainer. I got Patrick Mahomes there. I think since he's been a starter in the NFL, he's been the best quarterback in my opinion. Since his MVP year, he's already won a Super Bowl. Arguably already one of the most talented quarterbacks of all time. um, yeah, I got him as my highest graded quarterback, and I think, it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. My number one quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. I think there's no doubt about it. This kid is obviously the best quarterback in the NFL. You just see his arm talent, his accuracy, his ability to make plays. There's no one who can do stuff like him. And I think with Brady's career coming to an end, he could potentially take over that GOAT spot.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so number two for me, I think that it gets a little tougher from here on out, but I think for me it's pretty easy. I got Aaron Rodgers there. I think that even though he's getting up there in age, he won an MVP last year, so obviously that's not holding him back at all. I think that he's got a less offense, a worse offense around him than Patrick Mahomes, but he's still doing just as good, putting up the better numbers last year. And his playoff success doesn't really show for it, but I still think that he's, in my opinion, undoubtedly the number two best quarterback in the NFL right now.
Yeah, same. I got A-Rod, same as you. Um, I mean, he's like 38 years old, I think now. And his arm talent hasn't even gone away. He can still throw the ball like 70 yards, perfect on the round numbers. I think Rodgers isn't gonna decline at all this upcoming year. I mean, we'll see where he plays next year. There's so many trade rumors with Rodgers. Will it be Vegas? Will it be Denver? That's a very interesting situation to keep your eyes on. But I think Aaron Rodgers is the clear-cut number two quarterback.
Yeah, completely agree with that. His arm talent is by far, I think, second best, maybe even first in the league still, and he's 38, so that just shows how good he is. So third for me, I think this may be a little questionable, but I think even with all the allegations around him, Deshaun Watson for me, when he's playing, and I think if he goes to a better situation, he is my number three quarterback in the NFL. He was surrounded by the league's second least efficient running game last year, second least efficient overall defense last season, and he was arguably, he was top five for sure, and I think that arguably he was the second best quarterback in the league last year, not overall, but last year. And I just think that even through all the allegations and stuff that's going on with him, I think when he's playing and on the field, he's the third best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, that's kind of a shocker for me. I don't have him in my top five, but I like that. I like that a lot. Deshaun Watson makes everyone around him better, and that's a great pick. For my third, I have Josh Allen. What he showed in his third season in the NFL, I was blown away by how big of a step he took. Coming off his second year, he really didn't have that great of a first 2 years. He was okay, but not anything special. This year, he was third in MVP votes. He was great. He can run the ball. We've seen that. I think he scrambled for around 700 yards, maybe around there. And he could throw the ball great. He probably has the best arm in the NFL up there with Rodgers and Mahomes. I got him as my third.
Yeah, I agree with that. And going into my next one, I got Josh Allen at four. I think that, it was tough to put him below Deshaun Watson just because all the stuff that's going on, but I think he is arguably, at times, he's the second best quarterback in the NFL, and he led that Bills team to the playoffs last year. And that team's going to be scary good next year with another year of him and Stephon Diggs. That he's got a great offense around him, good run game. solid second and third receivers. I think that team's going to be scary good next year, and you have to watch out for them in the AFC.
Yeah, that Bills team drastically took a step up. I'm excited to see what they can do this year. At my number 4 spot, I got none other than the GOAT, Tom Brady. I think what Tom Brady showed in his 43rd years old, his 20 plus year in the NFL, he led the Buccaneers to the Super Bowl and won. That's absurd. To be that high of an age and never even lose that arm talent, accuracy, or decision making. I think that puts him up there at number 4.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, you know how I feel about Tom Brady, and I think he's a great quarterback, obviously the GOAT, and I think he didn't have the best regular season, but obviously it doesn't really matter when you win the Super Bowl. And I just think that compared to some of these other guys, he's got a better supporting cast around him. And he's obviously a lot more proven than these guys. I mean, 7 Super Bowls, it's unmatched, but I got him a little bit lower down. With my number 5 spot, I got Russell Wilson. I think for the first 8 games of the year, he was in the front. He was the front runner for the MVP. He was on the top ranked quarterbacks in overall grade. I mean, he kind of fell off the second half of the season, but I think next year he's got one of the best receiver duos in the league with Lockett and DK Metcalf. He's got a great running back with Chris Carson. That O line is questionable, but he still makes it work with his scrambling ability. And he's been one of the most consistent quarterbacks in the NFL of his career. I think he's just so reliable. I got him in the top 5.
Yeah, same as me. My 5th quarterback is Russell Wilson. You're right. In those first 8 games, he was the clear-cut MVP. Um, he was great with DK Metcalf. He has great weapons. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Greg Olsen last year, Chris Carson, Rashad Penny. They have a great supporting cast around them. I think one thing that can make the Seahawks legitimate Super Bowl contenders is that offensive line. I think you give Russell Wilson legitimate offensive lineman, then he could turn into a top 3 even quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if he had a better line, like say Bucks line or Packers, like Brady and Rodgers, I think that he's got to be up there for that MVP conversation in top 3 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
So for my number 6, I got the GOAT, Tom Brady. I mean, we just talked about him a little bit. I mean, obviously won the Super Bowl, is 7th. It's crazy. He's what is he, 43, 44 now? And he's still top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He hasn't fallen off a bit. And I think that he's just so reliable that you got to have him up here. And he's got one of the best supporting casts around him in the NFL with Godwin, Mike Evans, Gronk, Antonio Brown, that great O-line, that great defense. I just think that you can't bet against them, and they got to be up there for Super Bowl favorites going into next year for back-to-back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tom Brady, I mean, it's more likely that it's surprising because it's more where people are just waiting for him to retire, and he doesn't. He just keeps playing and playing. So he'll continue to shine. My number 6 spot, I got Deshaun Watson. I mean, we'll see what happens with all these allegations. It's terrible what's happening. I think if these come back false, then he will most likely get traded. You see the Texans already building without him in their plans. They signed Tyrod Taylor. They drafted a quarterback in the 3rd round, Davis Mills out of Stanford. So I think Deshaun Watson, no matter what happens with those allegations, is on his way out. And I think whatever team gets him is going to get one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's only 25 years old, and he's a superstar quarterback. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah, I mean, I had him at 3. I think he's an absolute stud, and I agree with you completely. It's terrible what's going on with all that stuff, but I think that when he's playing and when he's on the field, and especially if he goes to a better team, he's going to be right up there, top 3, top 5 quarterback next year. Mm-hmm. So with my next guy, I got Lamar Jackson. I mean, he fell off a little bit this year, but that MVP year, I mean, he absolutely torched the league. And I mean, it's a regret. I mean, he's not going to emulate that season back-to-back years. So, I mean, you could kind of see that regression coming. it was less effective last year. He's got one of the out of these top 10 even guys, I'd say he's got one of the worst cores around him with that receiving core and that. I mean, he's got Mark Andrews, who was top 5 tight end, but I think that receiving core, I mean, they drafted Rashad Bateman, which is a great add to the offense, but I think that he's just one of the most dynamic quarterbacks of all time with that running ability, and I think that you got to have him up there in your top 10.
Yeah, I got Lamar Jackson at 7 too, actually. I think, last year he definitely fell off. The MVP year was unmatched. I don't think anyone had that great of a year on the ground and in the air since Mike Vick. So he definitely deserves to be in that 7 spot. Baltimore definitely improved that wide receiver position in the offseason. They brought in Sammy Watkins. They drafted Rashad Bateman. They drafted another guy in the 4th round who I like a lot, Tylan Wallace. So they just keep giving them weapons.
Yeah. So going to that number 8, I got Dak Prescott. I think a healthy Dak Prescott is without a doubt a top 10 quarterback. And he was on pace last year for one of his career year before being injured in week 5. And I think that offense, they got arguably the best receiving core in the league with Amari Cooper. They got CeeDee Lamb. I mean, they got so many weapons around him. Zeke Elliott. They got that one of the best O lines in the NFL. And I just think that he's going to pick up right where he left off, where he got injured, and he's going to have another great year. And hopefully, hopefully he doesn't get injured because I love watching him play. But he's got that same offensive coordinator. They've had the great offenses in the past, and I think that he's without a doubt a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, definitely. That was so brutal to see him go down with injury last year. Um, Dallas's offense was top 5 when he was healthy last year. They just needed to improve upon that defense, but I think they did a good job of doing in the offseason. Bringing in Micah Parsons. They brought in Kelvin Joseph from Kentucky in the 2nd round. So we'll see what those 2 rookies do and if that defense can step up for Dak. At my 8th spot, I got Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray last year took a huge step up from year 1. I think D-Hop has a lot to do with that. D-Hop was a safety valve. He could just throw it up to him, and D-Hop would make plays after the catch. Kyler Murray's scrambling ability is probably second in the NFL to Lamar Jackson. He has a cannon for an arm, too. He's my number 8.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I got him just after you at number 9. I mean, everything you said, completely agree with. D-Hop, he's got one of the best receivers in the league. They've got Christian Kirk. They've got a pretty good offensive line, not great, but pretty good. And I think without a doubt, he's one of the best scrambling quarterbacks. I think second in the league. And I think that with his running ability, with that arm talent, with D Hop around him, I just think you got to have him in the top 10.
All right, who is your 9? Oh, yeah, Kyler Murray. Moving on to my number 9, I got Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has been underrated his whole career in Detroit. He's done some amazing stuff. And I think it's kind of a shame that people didn't really notice him. People are now noticing him that he's in Los Angeles on a big market team like the Rams. He's finally going to get that recognition. Him and McVay's an offensive genius. So I think pairing them 2 up, they can do dangerous stuff in LA.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we're kind of going right after each other here. I got Matthew Stafford as my number 10 quarterback, rounding out the top 10. I think that I agree with you completely. He's been underrated his whole career. I mean, he was on the Lions, we both live in Detroit, but one of the worst franchises in the NFL. And he's got Sean McVay, which is arguably one of the best offensive minded head coaches in the league. And I think pairing them up with that receiving core and that team around him, that Rams team is going to be dangerous again next year.
Yup. Top 10 running backs. Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. My 10th one is Ryan Tannehill. I just think Tannehill took a huge step up. I think that was definitely due to Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry definitely took the load off of him a ton. obviously going over 2K yards. And I think that play action offense that they did, you never knew if they're going to run it or pass it, paid off big time to Tannehill. I think he's going to be dangerous again this year with Tennessee.
Yeah, I agree with that. I got Tannehill right outside my top 10. I think that you can't have many lower than that with that offense he's got around him, with Julio bringing in AJ Brown. They got Derrick Henry, obviously one of the best running backs in the league, and I just think that, I mean, people discourage him or diss him for having Derrick Henry, but that offense would not be the same without him. He's still a very good quarterback, and I think that bringing Julio in is just going to make them even better.
Yep. Moving on to our top 10 running backs. Who is your number one?
So coming in number one for my running backs, I got Derrick Henry here. I go back and forth between him and McCaffrey, but I think that you can't take away from Derrick Henry his 2,000 yards rushing last year. I mean, unmatched. I think that he's far and none the best rushing only running back in the NFL. He's still a serviceable pass catcher out of the backfield, but I just think that even without that, he's still the number one running back in the NFL, and you can hand him the ball anywhere on the field, and he's going to make a play. And I think that any team he goes on, good O-line or not, he's the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. He's my number one running back as well. I mean, it's very, very rare you see a running back over 2,000 yards in the NFL, and Derrick Henry did it with an ease this season. The Titans' offensive line is super good, which makes his job a little easier. But still, I think anytime a running back goes over 2,000 yards, they deserve to be the number one back in the NFL.
Yeah, yeah. And number two, I just kind of said it, but I got Christian McCaffrey. I think he's the most complete back in the NFL, arguably the most talented, right up there. And I think he shows his problems with his injuries, not as reliable as Derrick Henry, but I think he gets over 300 targets a year out of the backfield, and he's dropped only 9 in his career so far. I think he's far and none the second best, maybe even the first best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, same here. I got him as my number two. I mean, not a year ago, he went over 2,500 all-purpose yards, rushing and receiving. He's, in my opinion, the clear-cut number one um, receiving back in the NFL. Kamara's right up there, but I just don't know if he can top what McCaffrey does with his rushing ability and receiving ability.
Yeah, we agree with those number two. My number three, I got Dalvin Cook. He's the closest thing to Henry in terms of a running back. I just think he's the second best rushing back in the NFL, and I think, on that Vikings team, they got a serviceable line, but not the greatest. I think he's been one of the most reliable, right behind Derrick Henry, rushing. Same with him. He's one of the most talented runners in the NFL, and I think he can make a play anywhere on the field, and that's just something that every team should want. I think he's the clear-cut number three.
Yeah. I mean, he's right there after he's my number four. But my number three is Alvin Kamara. I think Kamara's ability to catch out of the backfield. I think he's far and away the number two receiving back in the NFL, right up there with McCaffrey, which I said earlier. And I think without him, that Saints team their offense really isn't nothing. I think we saw Drew Brees struggle a ton last year. Obviously, he's retired now, but I think without Kamara, they wouldn't make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. But with my number four, I'm going on Nick Chubb here. I think Nick Chubb, he's like right up with these guys. He's one of the best pure ball carriers in the NFL. He broke the tackle rate for the NFL over the last 2 seasons with 124 broken tackles on 488 carries, which is just insane. And he's just so hard to bring down. Such a good running back. And I think that if they didn't have Kareem Hunt on that team, I think he's the number 3 running back even in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean Nick Chubb, he's a great power back. He was easily one of the biggest factors on that Browns team in the playoffs, the upset against the Steelers. That's a great pick. My number 4, I said earlier, was Dalvin Cook. You nailed it when you said he was the second best pure rushing back in the NFL. Um, the game's kind of changed a little bit. I think he would be right up there at 2, but the game's kind of evolved to more passing league. So he definitely can still catch out of the backfield, but I don't think he can catch it like McCaffrey and Kamara. But his rushing ability puts him right up there at 4.
Yeah. I think my next guy, I think this is obvious for me. We just talked about him, Alvin Kamara, New Orleans Saints. I just think him last year on that team that's not a playoff team at all. I think that he's just such a big X factor on that team, and he hauled in 100 targets and hauled in 80 catches in every season of his career. He's averaged 2 yards per route in his NFL career. I think that's he's the second best for me receiving back in the NFL behind McCaffrey. And I think every team wants that. He's just such a weapon out of the backfield. Can play him at receiver even. He's still a good rusher too, and he's fast, big, strong. I just think he's a great running back, and I have him at number 5.
Yep, my number 5 is Nick Chubb. I mean, you said it earlier. He's just a bruiser. He's a power runner. Um, he's not afraid to knock you on your butt, not afraid to rough you up. Um, I think especially that Browns offensive line, which I believe is the number 1 offensive line in football, definitely is a big X factor in that. But he's my number 5.
Yeah, that's a great point you brought up. I didn't even talk about that. The offensive line, the Browns are just going to help him even more. I think he's going to be dangerous. Could make a chance for top 5 running back, top 3 even in the NFL next year. So my number 6, some people might be surprised we haven't said him yet. I got Saquon Barkley. He's, I think, the most talented running back in the league. I mean, everyone knows his injury problems. He's only played his rookie years is only full year so far. And I mean, you can't have him below 6 in my opinion. He's just too talented, too fast, I mean, he you know what he did in that rookie year with that offensive line, not many weapons around him. And I think a healthy Saquon this year, hopefully he doesn't get hurt again, but with those weapons they're bringing in, it's going to take some of the load off him with Kenny Galladay, Tony coming in too. I just think that they're going to have a better passing game, which is going to take some of the load off him, so he's going to have an even better year. I'm praying he doesn't get hurt, but I think he's number 6.
Yep, completely agree. I got him at 6, which I think people could say is a big shocker. So I've seen people list him as high as their number one running back. But in my opinion, I'm gonna go out and say it. I think Saquon Barkley is the most overrated player in the NFL. I'm not saying overrated means he's a bad player, not at all. I think he's tremendous. Right? I just don't see how he's the number 1 running back after one quality year of production. I mean, he hasn't just put up the production as McCaffrey, Kamara, or Henry has. I don't think that's enough to catapult him in the top 5. But I do think he is the most talented running back in the NFL. And I think if he can stay 1 full year healthy, I think he can get right back up in that top 3.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just hoping he doesn't get hurt this year. So number 7, I got Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones, he's never had a bad year in the NFL. With 4 straight seasons earning a PPF grade of at least 75 and 79.6 as a rusher. He's averaged at least 3 yards a carry after contact in each of the last 2 seasons. I mean, he's right up there with Nick Chubb. He's just a bruiser. He's a threat out of the backfield too. With Aaron Rodgers, I mean, any running back is dangerous out of the backfield, but he's just a power rusher. He's fast, physical. He's got the whole package, and I think he's out of these top 6 guys, he's right up there with the number 7.
Yeah, I have Aaron Jones my 7. I think Jamal Williams leaving in free agency the Lions, I think will definitely get some more opportunities for him. I also think, AJ Dillon coming up, he was great in the second half of the season last year. When Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams were both down with COVID last year, he definitely took the chains and was a beast. So you got him coming up on you. But I'm gonna go kind of fast here for my 7, 8, 9, 10. My 7 is Aaron Jones. My 8 is Jonathan Taylor. My 9 is Ezekiel Elliott. My 10 is Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I like those a lot. I'll go faster here too. So my number 8, I got Ezekiel Elliott. That might be a little controversial, but I think with a healthy Dak, he's one of the best running backs in the league. My number 9, I got Austin Eckler. I think he's had the highest PPF grade receiving over the last 2 seasons, and it's not McCaffrey, it's not Kamara, it's him. And I think he's one of the most underrated players in the NFL. And my number 10, this is a tough one. I'm between Joe Mixon and David Montgomery here. I got Joe Mixon though. I think he gets a lot of hate, but I think he's still a really good running back. He plays all the snaps there, over 70% of the snaps in Cincinnati. I think you can't have him at the top 10.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was on the edge between Eckler and Joe Mixon. I edged out Eckler just because of his receiving ability. Okay, moving on to wide receivers. My number one receiver in the NFL is Devontae Adams. I think Devontae Adams, him and Rodgers might be the number one quarterback receiver duo in the NFL. He was tremendous last year. He was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I got him too. I think this is probably the easiest decision right behind Mahomes at number one. Devontae Adams, I mean, absolute stud last year, arguably the best player in the NFL. Him and Rodgers, I mean, they're I think in my opinion, they're clear cut number one receiving quarterback duo in the NFL. I think you can't have them any lower than one.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. My number two receiver in the NFL is Tyreek Hill. I think there's not really much players like him with his speed and his route running mixture. He's easily the fastest wide receiver in the NFL. You just watch him play. Um, he'll burn you. You if you press him, you play off coverage. He'll get you lost with his route running ability. I think there's no one like him. He's my number two.
Yeah, I like Tyreek Hill too, but I got DeAndre Hopkins here at two. Him and Kyler Murray are right up there too with that duo in the NFL. And I think in my opinion, he's the best jump ball receiver in the NFL. Great route runner. He's got obviously great hands. He gets so many targets. He gets so many touchdowns. He just does it all. And I think that with another year of Kyler Murray and him under their belt, I think that they're just going to be unstoppable next year together.
Yeah, I completely agree. I didn't mention that. Patrick Mahomes is a big factor. Anytime you got Mahomes as your quarterback, you're going to put up good numbers. Um, my third one is DeAndre Hopkins, the same as you, as you had as your two. Um, DeAndre Hopkins, like you said, is just unbelievable. He's a great jump ball wide receiver. Definitely helped out Kyler Murray, and he's my number three.
So number three, I'm right up there with you. I got Tyreek Hill. I mean, fastest player in the NFL by far. He's just so dynamic out there, and I agree with you completely. There's no one else like him. He just torches guys. Any DB on him just absolutely torches them. You can't guard him. He's the biggest deep ball threat in the NFL. And of course, you got Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. I mean, you're going to do big things.
Yeah. My number four receiver is Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs had a career year in Buffalo. He was Josh Allen's number one option. He was a huge factor on getting them to that AFC Championship team. He led the NFL in catches and yards, or not yards. I'm sorry, just catches. But I think Stephon Diggs drastically helped out that Bills team.
Yeah, I love Stephon Diggs. I had my fantasy team last year, but I got Julio Jones here at number four. Wasn't healthy last year, but I think a healthy Julio Jones and a new team, new city, like fresh start for him. He's a seven-time Pro Bowler. He's had 1,000 plus seasons in an NFL career. And I just think that this fresh start, new city, new team, new quarterback, everything's just going to be huge for him. And I think he's going to be right up there again as one of the best receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I think you're going to be a little shocked to see that I left Julio Jones out of my top 10. I think, he's older now. Last year, in the games he played, he didn't quite look like Julio Jones. Hopefully he can have a bounce back year, but I don't know if I personally would rank him that high just based off last year. My number five receiver, I have Michael Thomas. A year ago, he broke the NFL record for single catches in a year. I think people kind of hate on him a little bit because he tends to run mainly short routes like slants, digs, out routes. Um, I still think his ability to get it open is like none other in the NFL.
Yeah, I like Michael Thomas a lot too. My number 5, I got Stephon Diggs, though. You had him at 4. He led the NFL in receptions and 127 and receiving yards in 1,500. I just think he is by far that X factor on that Bills team, right, with Josh Allen. That duo is, again, another top duo in the NFL. And he's a big threat in the red zone. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL. I mean, he's got the whole package. He's a jump ball receiver, brings every ball down, and I just think he's a nightmare matchup for DBs, and you can't leave him out.
Yeah, he's a great route runner, like you said. Yeah, DBs can't really catch up with him. My 6 through 10, I'm going to go a little faster. I'm just going to talk a little briefly about each one. My 6 might be a little shocker because it's a little early in his career, but I got Justin Jefferson. He broke every single record that he could break for a rookie wide receiver. He was tremendous last year for the Vikings. I think he absolutely deserves to be in a top 10. My number 7, I have maybe a little shocker, but I got DK Metcalf. I think DK Metcalf is so overrated to the point where I think he's underrated. I think people just don't give him enough credit for what he does. Um, I mean, I've seen some people who don't even have a top 20 receiver, which is absurd to me. But he comes right there, right at number 7. My number 8 is Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is a tremendous jump ball wide receiver. He was a huge factor for Tom Brady. He was probably Tom Brady's go-to guy in Tampa Bay. He comes in at number 8. My number 9 is Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson is another guy who I think is very underrated. He plays for Chicago, who hasn't really been that great, not very great quarterback play. But hopefully him and Justin Fields can get it together. And my number 10 is Keenan Allen, who I think is probably the best slot receiver in the NFL. His route running is great. His hands are great. He's kind of a complete wide receiver.
Yeah, I like all those guys. It gets tougher from here after the top 5. So not my number 6, I got Michael Thomas. I mean, you talked about him earlier. That 2020 year, he was unstoppable, and I think that he's gonna have a bounce back year this year. Healthy. I think Jameis Winston, he brings a different factor than Drew Brees. He's got a better arm strength. I think he's gonna be more of a threat down the field than what he was with Drew Brees. My number 7, this gets tough here, but I got Allen Robinson. I think he's so underrated. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL. He's so overlooked, and I think that I agree with you completely with that better quarterback play with Justin Fields. Hopefully, he can get more recognition. By number 8, I got Justin Jefferson right up there too. I mean, people might not have him in their top 10, but I just think after that rookie year, you can't leave him out, and he's got one of the best futures I think in the NFL. By number 9, I got DK Metcalf right up there too. I mean, he's 6'4", 230. I mean, he's unlike any other receiver in the NFL. He's a nightmare matchup. I mean, he's unguardable. He broke the Seahawks franchise record for receiving yards with 1,300. He had 10 touchdowns and averaged over 15 yards per catch. I just think that size, speed, strength, I just think you can't leave him out of the top 10 either. Am I number 9? What am I at, 9 or am I at 9 or 10?
I thought that was your 10.
I think that was 9. I got one more, I think. Number 10, I agree with you. I mean, I go back and forth with this. I think Keenan Allen's a great receiver too. I agree with you. He's the best slot receiver in the NFL. But I got Amari Cooper at that 10 spot. I think with a healthy Dak coming back, he's going to be a threat to be up there in that top 5 for receivers. He's another great route runner, and he's a threat in the red zone. He's another deep ball threat, and I think healthy Dak is going to make all the difference for him. He's going to have another great year.
Yeah, I mean, I was back and forth between Keenan Allen and Cooper. I just gave the slight edge to Keenan Allen. Okay, going into my top 10 tight ends, I think this one, I mean, I don't even think I have to say it. I think you already know who it is. It's obviously Travis Kelce. I mean, Kelce was unreal last year. He was number one option to Mahomes, number one option in the number one offense. Um, he's unreal what he can do. I mean, He's kind of like a wide receiver trapped, a wide receiver and a lineman combined in a tight end's body. He can block great, which is very crucial to that Chiefs offense. He can catch like a wide receiver, and I think that makes him the number one.
So me, this might be a little shocker for you, but I'm going George Kittle here. I think he's a dominant receiver and a dominant blocker. I think he's a better, not as good a receiver as George Kittle, but I think that his blocking ability makes up for that. He's a threat in the slot. He's a matchup nightmare for those linebackers that get put on him, and I think that he's unguardable too. He's just so strong and so physical that any quarterback, I mean, just or Trey Lance or Garoppolo who plays with them, he's gonna have a good year. I got him as my number one.
Yeah, that's a big debate going on. I would have to give a slight edge to Kelsey due to his receiving ability, but I think you could go Kittle because of his blocking ability. Um, George Kittle is my number two. You nailed it when you said his blocking ability. I mean, that's a thing that goes overlooked in tight ends. They you have to be able to block as a tight end. Um, um, Travis Kelsey and Kittle are hosting Tight End University, and there's a speech there, and Kittle was saying, tackles get paid 20 mil a year, receivers get paid 20 mil a year, and tight ends really don't get paid that much, and they do the same job as an offensive lineman, yet they catch the ball too. And I think he nailed it, and I think that's pretty much what Kittle does.
Yeah, I agree with that completely with what he said. Tight ends are really overlooked, and I mean, you saw Kelsey last year. He's my clear cut number two, and I think you can put either one. They're interchangeable, but I think that he is so dominant, and he had such a dominant year last year. And without him, he in my opinion is that number one offense on the Chiefs, ahead of Tyreek Hill. And I think him and Mahomes are just so dominant and so dynamic that you can't leave them out. I mean, they're interchangeable. You go back and forth. They're very different, but I got Kelsey as my number two.
Yeah, and I think we have the same three here, and it's Darren Waller for me. Darren Waller, he's more of a receiver. He struggles a little bit in the blocking, but Darren Waller's a stud, man. You just watched him play. He's got the speed of a receiver, and he's got the size of a tight end. He runs people over. He has great hands. Um, he's a very unique wide receiver. He reminds me a lot of Kyle Pitts, or Kyle Pitts reminds me a lot of him. I think Kyle Pitts is gonna have that same effect as Waller does in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I mean, I got Darren Waller at number three too. I think this top three is pretty set. I mean, he's a former wide receiver, so he's got that speed, and his speed is unmatched with any other tight end in the NFL. He broke out in 2019 with over 1,000 receiving yards, and ever since then he hasn't looked back at all. He's just gone up every year, and I think that Derek Carr, he's a great quarterback. He's very underrated in my opinion. I think that they're right up there as the number three, in my opinion, tight end quarterback duo in the NFL.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm gonna go a little fast through my 4, 5, and 6. My 4 is Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews as a tight end is the number one option to Lamar Jackson. He helps him a lot in those jump ball situations. He's that safety valve to Lamar Jackson. If he doesn't have anybody to throw to, he just throws up to Mark Andrews. He's not. I wouldn't say he's blocking is a strong suit. He can block, but I definitely think he's a threat in the receiving game. My 5th one might come as a little surprise. Might be higher up than you have him. Is Jonnu Smith. I think he definitely broke out last year with the Titans. He had over 700 receiving yards. He's just his speed and his blocking ability. He was huge for the Titans last year for Derrick Henry. Paving the way for that block, setting the edge, and to go along with his great receiving skills is huge. And my 6 is T.J. Hockenson. I was pretty upset when they drafted him. I wanted Devin Bush or out of Oliver Bad. He's kind of proved me wrong, though. He's been a top receiver in the NFL. He's going to be the number one option in the Lions offense, so I'm excited what he can do.
Yeah, I like all those guys. My number 4, 4, 5, and 6, I got TJ Hawkinson at 4. I mean, we see him a lot in Detroit, but I don't think people very understand how much he's changed that offense. He gets overlooked a lot. He's not really a household name like those top three, but I think he's right up there in his production, and I think he's the clear cut by far number one option in that offense, and he's going to have a huge year this year. with Jared Goff. I mean, it's a step down from Stafford, but either way, I think he's going to have a great year. And then number 5, I got Mark Andrews right there. I mean, I agree with you, everything you said. If Lamar Jackson didn't have Andrews to throw to, he's not as good a quarterback as he is. He's that safety valve from Lamar Jackson. He's so reliable, and I think he's right up there with all these top 5 guys are pretty close except for the top 2. My number 6, this is pretty tough, but I got Noah Fant here. He's a rising star. I mean, he's broke out this year. He's a good blocking tight end too, and he's also a threat receiving. Um, I think either way, Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock this year, I think he's going to have a great year. I think you can't leave him out of this top 10, and I got him as my number 6.
Yeah, I like that Noah Fant pick a lot. I left him out of the top 10. Now I'm starting to regret it a little bit now that you mentioned him. But yeah, that's a great pick. I'm gonna go through my 7, 8, 9, 10 here. My 7, I got Gronk. I think he had a little bit of a slow start to the year, just shaking that rust off. But around the midway part of the season, he really picked up the speed. He had a few over 100-yard games. He was a great red zone threat, which I think is huge for the Buccaneers. You really only have Mike Evans and Gronk as your 2 really jump ball wide receivers. Chris Godwin's mainly that route runner, and Scotty Miller and Brown are your burners. But I think Gronk was huge for the Buccaneers last year. 8, I have Hunter Henry. He is a lot like Gronk. He's a red zone threat. He can block. I think him and Jonnu Smith are going to be easily the top tight end duo in the NFL. My 9 is Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins. I just think he's an athlete. I don't really see any tight ends that can jump as high as he can. I'm pretty sure he had one of the top verticals in the combine. So I think that's huge for him. And number 10, I have Evan Ingram. He struggles a ton with hands. He had the highest drops for tight end in the NFL last year. But once he gets the ball in his hands, he can do great things with it. So that's my 7 through 10.
Yeah, I like all those guys a lot. And this 7 through 10 is pretty tough. But my number 7, I got Gesicki. He's got another year of Tua. I think Tua's going to take a big step up, and he's going to be, I think, maybe that number 1 option, maybe not, but I think he's right up there for that number 1 option in that offense. Just like you said, he's a freak athlete, and he's a big red zone threat. And he's gonna have a lot of receptions and a lot of touchdowns, I think, this year. My number 8, I got Hunter Henry getting that edge of Jonnu Smith. I just think he's a better receiver. He's a better red zone threat. I think Jonnu's a better blocker, but I give that edge to Hunter Henry. My number 9, I got Jonnu Smith right behind him. I think that they're, just like you said, the best tight end duo in the NFL by far. And I think that they're going to be dynamic next year. We'll see how Cam Newton can play, but I think either way, he loves those tight ends, Cam Newton. I think they're poised to have a big year, both of them. And at my number 10, this might come as a big of a shock, but I got Kyle Pitts here. I think that he's unproven. I mean, he's a rookie, hasn't even played a snap yet in the NFL. But I just think that his potential and his everything about him, he's probably, I think, the best tight end prospect of all time. I think you just can't overlook him, even though he's a rookie. I think he's having a great year. Matt Ryan gets some hate, but I think he's a good quarterback, and I think he's gonna love having Kyle Pitts in that offense.
Yeah, completely agree. I definitely would add Kyle Pitts to my tight end in the top 10. I think I would probably put them in that 7th spot, but I just like to leave rookies off for now, just because we can't see him play yet. I completely agree with you. Kyle Pitts is the best tight end prospect of all time, with his ability to play slot outside tight end, makes a match. All right, so that wraps up for today's episode. Make sure to be on the lookout for part 2 to this series. Going onto the defensive side, and watch out for some potential interviews with some famous athletes. That wraps up for today's video, and see you later.